Hi, folks. This is Truby Chiaviello, publisher and editor of PRIMO magazine, and I want to come to you today about Columbus, the continuing struggle that we have. It's been almost a month since Columbus Day here in 2022, and the assaults on Columbus, the effort to eliminate Columbus Day. The vandalism against his monuments and statues, the tearing down of his statues, sometimes often there are municipalities out there that will vote to take down a statue or a monument that was donated by the Italian immigrants and the Italian American community of the specific municipality. And the reason for it is basically the reputation of Columbus has changed. Columbus is now, when we talk about Columbus, the conventional wisdom has settled in where he's at worst a genocidal maniac, an exploiter, not a good man, but a bad man. And, where does this all come from? Well, this all comes from from one man, Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn was a college professor. He used to work at one university. Then he transferred because I think he had to resign from his previous post, and he taught at Boston University. And he wrote a book, and I have it right here. The book is A People's History of the United States, and this was published in 1980. And as the name would imply, it's a serious critique. It's more than that. It's a condemnation, really, of American history. And this was published in 1980. It says received rocket sales. It's been embraced by celebrities, by Hollywood, by a number of people in the academic community. And it's supported by the Zinn Education Project, websites, organizations to try and disseminate this information to as many people as possible. And so many people who teach elementary school, high school, will pick this book up as a means to inspire students to read history. But in this book, he looks at chapter 1. Chapter 1 is titled Columbus, the Indians and Human Progress. Now, all Italian Americans, I recommend that you pick up this book and read it because I think it's very important for us to get to know the key antagonist. It's Howard Zinn, really, is the person who's done more than anyone to damage our view of Columbus Day and our view of American history. And another book that you need to pick up is Debunking Howard Zinn, which is written by Mary Grabar. This is a book recently written that is, I think, the only book out there that serves as a counter argument to Professor Zinn's book. And just give you an idea of what we're talking about. You look at his book, Howard Zinn, you can see it's quite sizable, and he goes throughout American history. And when people read this book, they think, well, he must know what he's talking about. But when you delve into it, you realize the scholarship is quite poor. And I'm going to try to give you some idea, give you an example of that. This book right here, this is the chapter, Columbus, the Indians and Human Progress. And I put a paperclip on it. And you can see, if I can just show it to you, this little sliver right here. This is what makes up for Professor Zinn's condemnation of Columbus and the early exploration, Spanish exploration of the New World. So this is about 20, it begins on page 1 and it ends on page 22. Now, I've read this chapter several times, of course, read the book. Really only looking at 8 pages of this, even a smaller sliver than that. I mean, you're looking at even a sliver of this, I guess. A sliver of this is his condemnation of Columbus. So based on this material, small amount of material, this entire book, is what's driving the hatred for Columbus. Now, I want to again show you this. This little sliver right here is what's driving the hatred of Columbus. Now, this seems amazing when you think about it, because Columbus, he lived from the 1450s until after the 1500s. Of course, 1492 is famous when he made the discovery of the New World. But here's a man who could read and write. He had served in the Merchant Marine prior, and then he wins the sponsorship to sail across the Atlantic towards Asia. And he became vice admiral of the ocean seas. A very, very important figure of history. Like him or hate him, he's a very important person of history. Now, I bring that up because somebody of that importance of his time would have a paper trail, would have enormous amounts of letters, correspondences, logbooks, and other things. But Howard Zinn really doesn't look at that. We're looking at source material now. Now, this is very interesting. This little sliver of material, it presents a bibliography. When you go to his bibliography, and I'm trying to turn to it as we speak, when you go to his bibliography and you look at here, I don't know if you can see it, but this is where the bibliography begins for chapter 1, and it ends right here. You're looking at only 9 sources. 9 sources. Now, this is a person, Columbus, one of the most important figures of history. And Professor Zinn only relies on 9 sources as material to besmirch and seriously taint his legacy. Now, in Journalism 101, we always taught, go to original sources. In Howard Zinn's case with Columbus, he doesn't go to any original sources, really. He lists 9 books. 8 of the 9 books are written from the mid to late 20th century. Actually, I would say 6 of those books are from 1970 onwards. Another book is from 1947, I think, and there's another one from 1950. Well, one of the authors that he mentions is a person by the name of Hans Koenig. Now, Mary Grabar, in her book Debunking Howard Zinn, makes the case that Professor Zinn plagiarized, copied material from Mr. Koenig's book. But only one book, only one source material is the History of the West Indies by Bartolomeo de las Casas. He was a priest who was the first priest to come to the New World. And it's that book. It's the only book that you get to the 16th century. This is after, some years after Columbus died. It's Bartolomeo de las Casas book, History of the Indies. And this was written in the mid to late 16th century. So there's not a lot there that Professor Zinn is using to make his case of how we need to now look at Columbus as a bad person. More than that, as an evil person. He makes accusations in the book which are startling. Let me just give you an idea of what we're talking about. This is a book here I have. I bought this book at a used bookstore here in Washington, D.C. off DuPont Circle. And this is a book here. It's titled Columbus and the Conquest of the Impossible by Felipe Fernandez Armesto. And this was written in 1974. And this is as his name would imply, he's Spanish. So he's able to read much of the text that was written in his native language by Columbus and others. Now, this is all about Columbus. Howard Zinn's book is about the history of the United States and a little bit prior. But this book about Columbus, okay, just look at the material. It's all written here about Christopher Columbus, all about his discovery, his background, his history, and then the period of settlement. And you're looking at, these are big pages here, but you're looking at almost 200, I guess, or let me see if I can, 217 pages. And he lists a bibliography that lists maybe, I guess, look at here, maybe 25 sources, maybe less than that. But a number of original sources that he looks at compared to this book. And you can see the small sliver. We're looking at 20 pages, but really 8 pages that looks at Columbus with only 9 sources. And those sources, by the way, are books that were mostly written from 1970 onward. That was a critique of American settlement, of European settlement of the New World. The people who wrote those books were obviously sensitive to the plight of the Native Americans, plight of the indigenous people. So this gives you an idea what we're talking about when we talk about looking at history and trying to get a fair assessment of Columbus. People out there can write a lot of material about him versus just something that's very small and almost insignificant. I recently interviewed Carol Delaney, who wrote a book, Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem. And we look at her book. It's all about Columbus, obviously, his voyages. And her thesis was that it was a religious calling on the part of Columbus to try and find a route to Asia in order to conquer Jerusalem, because he thought, Columbus thought that he was living a period when the prophecy, the book of Revelations, was occurring. So he had to retake Jerusalem for the second coming of Christ. And she lists maybe 200 sources or so. And she spent enormous amounts of time researching. It's just on the topic of Columbus, a very important figure of history. Comparison to something that maybe Professor Zinn did, looks at all of history, and takes a very critical view of our history, and just a small sliver is set aside for Columbus. And my argument is, look, if we're going to eliminate a holiday that's been around for over 100 years, we're going to tear down statues, some of which have been made by some of the best sculptors in the world, monuments that were donated by the Italian American community in these places, Italian immigrants who came from very poor circumstances. And these were statues that were donated to the cities for purposes of them showing their gratitude, their love for America, their thankfulness for the United States and for those communities. When you look at a place like Richmond, Virginia, for instance, there was a small Italian American community there that wanted to donate a statue of Columbus to show their gratitude for Richmond, for the city there in the South. And the people who opposed them were the Ku Klux Klan. Now, that statue back in 2020 was utterly destroyed. It was thrown into a creek nearby or some sort of gully. Before that, there was tremendous amounts of graffiti and vandalism. But this was not donated by rich people. This was donated by very poor people, barbers, carpenters, Italian immigrants, to show their gratitude. Now, if we're going to assault this legacy, this history, this showing of gratitude, this showing of love for our country, we better rely more than this amount of material. We better delve into the record with a considerable amount of energy and material. We better look at all sources. If we're going to condemn a man who was very important to world history, that many find heroic, then I think we deserve to rely on material that's far more scholarly, that's far more in depth, and that's written with the effort of scholarship that we expect. We should rely on books more like this than this. And so I hope maybe to follow up with more information to try to get the record straight on Columbus. Again, this figure is complex to say the least. Period of time, place, his journey, his exploration, his travels, his background. Very complex, very in depth. And it's deserving more than just a flimsy attack based on a small, select number of sources. So anyway, I hope to come with you again with some more material. But this is Truby Chiaviello, publisher and editor of PRIMO magazine. Thank you for tuning in. And, God bless everyone. And let's keep it up in trying to set the record straight of our historical figures and our legacy, our Italian American legacy that we can all be proud of. Thank you.